The government has said one thing about immigration and done another. But it can be argued that what the government has done has a strong economic logic and it has benefited the economy. The government has consistently said it will reduce immigration. In 2017, the Theresa May Conservative Manifesto said it would reduce immigration to tens of thousands, i.e. less than 100,000, which has been the policy since 2010. In 2019, the Boris Johnson Manifesto gave no specific commitment but did say there would be fewer lower skilled migrants and that overall the numbers will come down. Let's just pause for a minute and think about Conservative attitudes towards immigration. Conservatives are really split on this issue. On the one hand, immigration is seen as filling gaps in the labour market, a cheap supply of labour good for the economy. It helps business profitability and it helps to control inflation. On the other hand, some on the right don't like foreigners. Others see too many foreigners as threatening Britishness and traditions and have concerns about the strain on public services. This bothers a portion of the electorate, so there is a populist reason for politicians to be anti-immigration. It's popular with that portion of the electorate. So I think we can say that the government has had a split personality on immigration. It's constantly said that it will decrease it, but then it's let immigration dramatically increase. Of course, Brexit did give the UK complete control on immigration numbers. As a member of the EU, the UK couldn't restrict immigration from the EU, but all immigration is now controlled. Any migrant to the UK must have a visa. So if there is an increase, it's absolutely a deliberate government policy. We can see that while immigration from the EU fell, immigration from outside the EU has increased by much more. So there's been a massive increase in immigration overall. Looking at net migration, which is the balance of people coming in and leaving the UK, this reached a record high 740,000 in 2022, shown by the purple line here. The right of the Conservative Party has been complaining vociferously. So what's going on here? I've realised that there is some ambiguity about what the government's policy on immigration actually is. If we look at a breakdown for the reasons for immigration, we see that student visas are where the biggest increase has come. There's been a dramatic increase over the past few years. Let's just pause for a second and note from this chart that asylum seekers are a small proportion of the total. They're shown in blue at the bottom, and those coming illegally on boats are an even smaller proportion. By the amount of press coverage, you would think that asylum seekers are responsible for this increase in immigration, but this just isn't true. The biggest increase has come from a new policy introduced in 2021, offering 2-year work permits for overseas graduates at British universities after they graduate. The logic of this is to attract what the government described as the brightest and best into the UK workforce. By 2023, 114,000 students had taken advantage of this scheme, and an additional 30,000 family members also obtained visas under the scheme, bringing the total to 144,000. So just in student visas alone, the increase in 2023 was way above the previous tens of thousands target. The truth is that Sunak and Hunt are very much centre-right on this issue. They're not against immigration per se, and in fact they recognise the economic importance of it. We can note that there is actually a fair amount of evidence that the economy benefits from immigration, so there is an economic logic to finding ways to still allow immigration. The student visa scheme was actually in line with the 2019 Conservative Manifesto, in that manifesto did promise to reduce lower skilled migrants, by attracting the brightest and best graduates and postgraduates, it could be argued that the Conservatives are meeting that commitment. However, the evidence is that a high proportion of those overseas students may actually be in low-paid work, and they're not necessarily adding value by bringing in their skills. The government is reviewing this graduate visa scheme and it's considering whether to axe it. It may have made an announcement by the time you see this video. They already tightened the scheme last year, restricting provisions for family members to benefit from the student visa. And the evidence is that this has had some impact. The government wanted more evidence, so it tasked the official body that advises the government on immigration issues, the Migration Advisory Committee, to review the scheme. They recently published their report and they concluded that the scheme should be maintained, that there's no evidence that the scheme's being abused, and that closing or further restricting the scheme could put many universities at financial risk. Now, there's been some criticism of this report from some of the right-wing MPs who say that the report has looked at the wrong questions. And the Centre for Policy Studies, a centre-right think tank, has criticised the university's dependence on foreign students. It says if their business model is premised on the ability to work in the UK with no minimum salary requirements, then that needs to change. Just because something is financially advantageous doesn't make it right. The university has commissioned an economic consultant to calculate the benefits of this scheme. It was found that the scheme benefits the economy by £42 billion in 21-22 at a cost to the taxpayer of £4.4 billion. That's a benefit of almost 10 times the cost. However, this isn't really the point. Immigration provides cheaper labour, so of course it's good for employers. Of course the student visa is good for university finances because it attracts more students. But I don't think the government is being honest with those who want tighter immigration. If the government axes the scheme, the economic benefits would be lost. But some would argue that the fact that business profits from immigration is not a good reason to have it at such high levels. If it continues the scheme, I think it should be honest with the electorate as to why immigration is good for the economy. But it does have a problem in terms of the right of the Conservative Party. What's my opinion on all of this? Well, I've got mixed views. I do have a concern that immigration undermines UK labour markets by providing cheap labour. I also have sympathy with the argument that where there are labour gaps, the market should be left to adjust and increase wages to attract more UK workers back into the market. And I also have sympathy with the argument that increasing the population is highly problematic when public services are so stretched. Perhaps it sounds like I'm a bit anti-immigration. Well, actually I'm not really. There's a lot about free movement when we were in the EU that I really liked. And the strain on public services can be dealt with by massive investment in public services finance through tax increases on the super wealthy. Also, more conceptually, the concept of borders and nationality is a man-made, artificial concept. I'm not sure what I'm practically proposing here, but I think an interesting world would be one where there are no borders and the whole world works together in ensuring that everyone has a good standard of living. If it exists in Star Trek, it's possible. I hope you found this information useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.